Okay, November of 2020. I kind of mentioned earlier this semester that I wasn't going to focus on politics. I wouldn't avoid it either. And we've had sort of two main themes for the course this semester. We've talked a lot about water, and we talked a lot about energy. Well, those two kind of come together with this. This is probably going to be the last chapter we cover. Kind of comes together with this last topic, which is climate change. Climate change is intricately related to both our water cycle and our energy use. So it is a way of sort of summarizing everything we've talked about so far while dealing with an issue that affects us all politically, economically, it's going to be socially. You're going to hear more and more about this, especially during your lifetime. Things are starting to happen now already related to this, despite what some politicians say. So, what we're going to do, we're going to start with this. I want you to read these 6 statements. And I want you, usually I have people write down which number they correspond to on a sheet of paper and I tally them all up. But since there's 4 of you, we're not going to have a statistically meaningful exercise. So you don't need to do that. But I want you to read these and honestly assess where you are on this. And you don't have to tell me, I'm not going to ask you. I'll give you just a minute to look at it. All right, everybody figure out who you are? Anybody want to share? You don't have to. I'm not really asking you to. Sort of asking you to. Yeah, where are you, Anna? You're at it too. You're even kind of shaking his head. Do you guys know other numbers out in the real world? People who correspond to other numbers? I have people in my family who are definite 6s. I do. And I know some people who are 4s. They don't know, they don't care. It's not a big deal to them. Okay? This list of statements actually comes from a study about climate change. It's one of the most impactful studies I've ever read about climate change. It goes back to 2009. It's called the Six Americas Study. It's a group from George Mason University. And what they did was they interviewed 2,129 Americans on their beliefs about climate and then looked at their demographics. Who are these people? Is there something we can say about each of these groups and learn something about them? And I think the results are just ridiculously fascinating. Ridiculously fascinating. Now, this focuses on America, United States. Why do we worry so much about the US when it comes to climate change? There's a number of reasons why. One is that we have one of the largest economies on the planet. Okay? So climate change has the potential to affect an economy in many ways. It can harm the economy by damaging coastlines, bigger storms. If we respond to it and throw a bunch of money at it, it could damage the economy that way. Just sort of this balancing act. If we do nothing, it's going to cost us money. If we do too much, it might cost us money. So we worry about it in terms of the economic impact as well. And as it turns out, A lot of this change in climate is probably due to our use of fossil fuels. And guess who uses the most fossil fuels per person on the planet? We do, by far. So a lot of people are saying, oh, China should be doing something about it. China has more people. They produce less carbon per capita, but when you average it all out, they're about as bad as we are when it comes to putting stuff in the atmosphere. We're the two biggest carbon emitters right now. The thing is, it's been a real political football ever since this became an issue in the scientific community. And we have some politicians that have tried to enter into international agreements to limit carbon. And then we have politicians that come in right after and pull us out of it. So there's always this tug of war. We're going to be part of the world community when it comes to doing something about climate change. No, we're not going to do anything with the international community. It kind of goes back and forth, back and forth. The sad reality, if you look at the numbers, is climate change isn't going to get solved unless people in the US do something about it. I mean, we need other places to do it too, but if everybody does something and we don't, because we're the world's largest carbon emitter, it's still going to be a problem. So until the US gets on board with this, it's going to remain a problem. Simple as that. All right, I asked where you were. A couple of you that answered, you actually are in the biggest group. And if I had to be totally honest with you, I'd probably be a 2 too. I know I should be a 1. It'd be nice to be a 1. But if I'm totally honest with myself, I'm not a 1 yet. I think it's a big deal. I know we need to do something about it. Honestly, I don't do enough about it in my daily life. I drive my car a lot. At least my wife has a hybrid, but she doesn't drive as much as I do. I drive my pickup truck and it just spews the shit all over the place. So I could do better, but you can see that 51% fall in the category where, this is serious. We should do something, or I am doing something. Cautious is kind of in the middle. They don't kind of know what's going on there, and disengaged really doesn't care. So that accounts for almost a third of the U.S. citizenry right there. It's just not something they're going to think about. They got other things that they're more worried about. And then the ones that you hear a lot of noise from are the ones that are actively sort of campaigning against doing anything. The doubtful and the outright dismissive. They only account for about 20%, 1 out of every 5 Americans, but they're extremely vocal. So they have the lowest belief that changing climate is something that we should be concerned about. Now, when I've done this in the past, this classroom tends to lean a little more heavily toward the concerns and alarm side. Not much different than this plot. And it could be that people are giving me the answer that they think I want rather than the answer they really believe. So mostly when I get college students who are in a fairly introductory class, their beliefs mimic the rest of America. Not terribly different. Maybe a little more alarmed and concerned than the greater country, but not terribly different. So, again, what this study does is it polled people, and it sort of broke them into these 6 groups based on their responses to the polling. So every American, if given this questionnaire, would fall somewhere in here. And you guys kind of self-aligned, most of you, with number 2, okay? You think it's a big deal. We should do something about it. You might be doing a little, maybe not so much. A lot of us are in that camp. All right, let's look at the groups, though. This is what I find really fascinating, okay? Who are these Americans? We're just going to concentrate on the end members, okay? The alarmed and the dismissive. Who are they, okay? Who are the ones that really know climate change is an issue? They're doing something about it. They really want to see a changed world. And who are the ones that say, this is a bunch of crap? It's a conspiracy to control the world. You've probably heard some of these folks, right? I'm going to ask you, all right? Next semester's tuition on the line. You got to vote. Which group do you think is the most educated? Guessing's not going to work. This is serious stuff. Your tuition's on the line here. Who's the most educated? You think the Alarmed is? Is that where most of you put your money? Anybody want to go somewhere else? No school for you. It's really, this is the thing that really shocked me as an educator, is the two most educated groups on this are the end members, the alarmed and the dismissive. And as it turns out, the dismissive, just ever so slightly, I mean, you can argue that it's the same. 68% of those people attended college, 35% graduated. On the alarmed end, 66 attended college, 38%. So basically, it's about the same. You can fight with me for your tuition dollars back. But the reality is, the people that think this is a giant hoax are just as educated as a group than the people that are 100% sure this is an issue. The dismissive are not dumb people. And that's one thing that scientists have a really hard time with. These people disagree with me, they must be stupid. It's not true. And I'll show you some more facts about this group in a minute. Yeah, I just find it amazingly interesting that the highest educated folks in the country could be this polar opposite. Maybe it shouldn't surprise me given the polarization of lots of our political commentary these days, but you would think on a scientific issue, fact-based issue, there should be some agreement. Absolutely not. The lowest educated group are the disengaged, the ones that don't care. It's not a big issue to them. They tend to be the least affluent, so they're the poorest group. They have other concerns. They're just trying to find food. They're trying to make enough money to get through the week. That's a group, by and large, that's struggling. Climate change is not something that they give a rat's patootie about. They have more pressing, immediate issues. Who are the most sure of their stance? Want to take a guess? What's that? Yeah, you probably would guess this. The most sure of their stance are the end members. So here you have two highly educated groups. They're both very sure of themselves, and they're polar opposite. I think you'd have a hard time finding another scientific issue where this is the case, where smart, educated people come to such vastly different conclusions. There's a reason for it, though. The reason is not because one group is dumb. They're not idiot Republicans on one end and they're not libtards on the right. You know how talk goes. You throw names at one another. It's not. These are smart, educated people that have come to vastly different conclusions. So when I hear scientists say, oh, those idiots, it's like, people are not idiots. They're smart, they're accomplished, they're affluent, they're successful. All right, let's look at the alarm. That's where a lot of you were close to aligning. You were concerned. I think most of you thought, I should probably be alarmed, but probably don't have the financial means to really do anything about it, or it's not there yet. Now, if you look as a whole, there's certainly variation within the group. But in general, there is a political party affiliation. These tend to be moderate to liberal Democrats. Again, not really, this is just polling facts here. This is just what came out of the study. They asked, what do you believe and who are you? They are active in their communities. Generally, if you're active in your community, it's because you have time to be active in your community. To have time to be active in your community means that you have enough money and you don't have to work all the time. So these tend to be fairly affluent people as well. And a much higher percentage of women, especially the 55 to 64-year-old demographic. Older and middle-aged women tend to make most of the alarm category. Democrats, they're active in their community. As we mentioned before, they tend to be college educated. Not surprisingly, they have money. And this next part is kind of interesting because it's completely opposite of the next group. They have strong egalitarian values. Do you guys know what egalitarian is? There's several definitions, but basically to be egalitarian means people helping people. They want to help out their fellow man and woman. You know, these are people that believe we can make a better society by helping each other out. They want to help the poor attain the same level of happiness and success that they've had. They want to help them. They want the government to help them. They want everybody to help them. They want everybody to help everybody. Let's be a community. And along with that, they don't like to see people end up being downtrodden. They would say that, we have the best economy on the planet. Why can't we take care of our poorest, most unfortunate people? We certainly have enough money to take care of these folks. So they favor government sort of providing a basic level of need for everybody. So again, egalitarian. Let's be a community. Let's pull everybody up. I have plenty. I can pitch in a little and help somebody else out. And these folks do it. They're just not words. They get out, they're active in their communities. Very interesting, they're the least likely to use possessions as a measure of status. They have money, they have possessions, but they don't think rich people are better, smarter, more successful than poor people. Just because you have stuff doesn't make you a better person. That's what they would say. Your actions should be what your status should be measured at. What are you contributing to society rather than how much were you able to amass? And again, because they don't worship the almighty dollar, they believe that other things might have more value than money. They believe it's more important to do things, say, like protect the environment than it is to make rich people richer. That's what they would say. They said, we don't need to make corporations richer. We should be taxing them more and using some of that money to make a better world for the people who aren't doing as well. The rich people are still going to be rich. I'm still going to have my money, even if you tax me a little more. They're willing to be taxed. They're willing to get out in their communities. They believe the government can be an agent of change and good. They're the least likely to be evangelical Christians. They were asked, what is your religious affiliation? This group, by and large, didn't have a religious affiliation. And of all the potential religious groups, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, evangelical, Catholic, whatever. They were given all sorts of potential. This group chose evangelical Christianity the least. Not a statement of anything, it's just this group had the least number of those folks. The other end of the spectrum, you can think of my father-in-law. This is my father-in-law. He like fits this perfectly. And he's a good dude. He's a really good dude. These tend to be rich white dudes with a college education. Not surprisingly, they're conservative Republicans. This is kind of the opposite of the previous one. You had Democratic women who were highly educated. Here you have rich, white, male Republicans. The commonality is they're both highly educated. So there's definitely a political divide between these two groups. Not surprising. But another similarity with the alarm group is that they're active in their communities. These are not people who just sit on their piles of money all day. These folks are successful financially and they give back to the community. They hold strong traditional religious beliefs. They're the most likely to be evangelical Christian. That doesn't mean that most of them are, just that more folks chose this option in the questionnaire than any other option. There are like 10 options on the thing, and some had 22%, 18%, 16%, 14%. So maybe not mostly evangelical Christians, but it's the group that attracted the most of them. These folks believe strongly that your success in life is determined by you. They don't want to rely on the government. They don't want to rely on other people. They're individualistic. If you want something, go get it. A lot of these folks were self-made. They grew up poor. They worked hard. They became financially successful. That's what they want to see others do. They believe America is a place where if you work hard, you can be successful. They're not looking for a handout. They don't believe anybody should be looking for a handout, but they're civically active. They're out there helping people. People are down and out. They're out there giving of themselves. They don't want to see the government interfere. They think the government messes crap up. They believe if something needs to be done, people need to rise up and do it. We need the government to tell us, that we should drive less. We should know this. So in that sense, they don't believe that we should be taking from the rich and giving it to the poor. If people want to do that like they do, that's great. But they want to see a country where a person's lot in life is determined by how hard they want to work. They don't want a handout. They don't want to give a handout to those who aren't interested in working for it. They believe that you can't have a good environment unless the economy is good. And there's actually some real research that supports that. If you go to the poorest countries on planet, they have the worst environment. They don't have extra money for infrastructure to clean up garbage. They don't have the money for more advanced energy systems. They're stuck with fossil fuels. They use dated, cheap infrastructure because that's what they have. These folks would argue if you want a clean environment, you better have a good economy. Because the minute people run out of money, the environment's the thing they care about last. They're going to care about food, shelter, water, providing for their families. The environment, way down the list of where people will spend their money when they're cash strapped. So these folks will say, I want a good environment, but you don't do it by crippling the economy and throwing lots of government money at this. You'll have a better environmental situation if folks have money. They're going to make the right decisions because they don't have to choose between food and the environment. Interestingly, maybe not so much, they prefer highly politicized news. These are die-hard conservative Republicans who want to listen to other die-hard conservative Republicans talk about die-hard Republican conservatism. This is my father-in-law right here. Are these bad people? No, you could argue these are really good people. They give of their time. They give of their money. They have strong core values. They want people to rise up and do well. They don't want people to be down and out. They just want them to work hard and go take whatever life can give them. But they have to be willing to go out and take it. So I think if you looked at the list of both of these, you would say, these are all really good people. They just see the world a little differently. You know? One believes we need a community to be a better world. The other says we need better individuals to be a better world. Neither one is really wrong, right? This is the one I thought was kind of interesting. These people are skeptical. And I can appreciate that as a scientist. As a scientist, we're supposed to be skeptical. You need to prove stuff to us. We need to have data. We need to have valid assumptions. We need to be able to test this stuff. And until we have really strong evidence, then we should be skeptical of something. This is not out of line with science at all. But these folks have very little trust in scientists, media, and even though they're religious, they're not especially trusting of religious leaders as a group. They might like their individual minister, pastor, whatever, but they also know there's a lot of folks out there who just want to take your money in the name of religion. They're really skeptical. So again, different people, you can argue these are good people as well. They see the world really differently, and I'll give you another example on how different they see the world in a minute. And they've come to completely different conclusions about climate change. All right, I want you to look at that question there. So this study asked this of all 2,129 people. Do you feel that you are more a citizen of the world or a citizen of the United States? Are you a world citizen or are you American? Do you agree with that you're a world citizen? Do you somewhat agree? Do you somewhat disagree, or do you completely disagree? All right, check this out. Here's the alarm group, okay? These are the people that think that climate is an issue. We should be doing something about it. They're doing something about it. Primarily Democratic, rich women who hold strong egalitarian values. There's that group. 53% agree that they're a citizen of the world. rather than just a citizen of the United States. They see themselves as being part of a bigger global community. And about 47%, so it's kind of evenly split. But look at the dismissive. 13% see themselves as a citizen of the world. Almost 90% see them, I'm an American. These are patriotic people. They don't want to be part of a world community. They're Americans first. Americans always. Really different, isn't it? I personally have always felt I'm a citizen of the world, probably because I travel so much. I don't see much difference between people as I travel around. Doesn't mean I'm not, an American, but I feel like I'm more a citizen of the world. I would probably somewhat agree with this. But my father-in-law, he was a Marine. He definitely American. So it affects your worldview, or your worldview affects how you view climate change. Kind of argue it either way. So again, these populations, they're both made up of good people. They're both made up of educated people. But they see the world differently. They definitely see the world through a different lens. And then I thought this is interesting. Well, so this is evangelicals. It sort of just goes up the number as you get to the more dismissive end of whether climate change is real. So the more evangelical you are, the less likely you are to believe that climate change is an issue we should do something about and be concerned with. It's just a simple relationship. All right. So with that sort of political background, and we'll come back to the politics in a minute, we'll give you some background terms. So up to now, we've been talking about politics. Now we're just going to look at the science for a while. Only the science. We use a lot of different terms when it comes to this topic. Back in the 1990s, when this issue was really just coming to light, you heard the greenhouse effect or global warming a lot. Now, mostly what you hear is the term climate change. There's a reason for that. One is that these terms are different. They mean slightly different things. And as it turns out, climate change is probably the term that best encompasses everything that we want to talk about. So we've migrated from talking about greenhouse effect to global warming to climate change. Sadly, as we've changed these terms, it's led to some confusion. Scientists have done a poor job of communicating that these terms are different and how it affects the discussion. Global warming is simple. Average atmospheric temperatures increase. So if you look at the average temperature of the atmosphere of the Earth, it goes up over time. That's all global warming is. Anthropogenic global warming, sometimes you'll hear anthropogenic climate change. The term anthropogenic, like anthropology, is human-centered. Anthropogenic global warming means that humans are responsible for it warming up. Global warming could be due to a lot of different things. The sun could be burning brighter. The Earth could be turning darker. Think about the sun on a hot day hitting a black rock versus a white rock, or a black car versus a white car. If we suddenly painted the whole world black, it'd be hotter. If we painted the whole world white, it'd be colder, because that white surface area would reflect heat back out into space, And those black areas would absorb it and heat up, just like a white car and a black car in the middle of summer. In this case, anthropogenic means that humans are doing something to make it warm. It's not just some sort of natural cycle or natural system. Humans are mucking it up. Greenhouse effect is a type of global warming that's caused by increasing the percentages of heat retaining gases in the atmosphere. Now, that could be natural. It is possible that a huge volcanic eruption could spit out a massive amount of CO2 and create a greenhouse effect for a few years. Or it's possible that human beings could burn carbon-based fuels that were formed over millions of years, ignite it all, burn it to create energy, and then all that carbon goes up in the atmosphere in a very short period of time, increases the amount of heat-retaining gases. So we could have greenhouse effect. We could actually have anthropogenic greenhouse effect. So global warming, temperatures go up. Could be man-made, could be natural. Anthropogenic global warming, that's the humans doing it. Greenhouse effect, the warming is because of putting gases into the atmosphere. And finally, the preferred term of our time, called climate change. Because what we've come to realize is it's not so much the temperatures creeping up by a couple of degrees that is such a big deal. I mean, in the winters here in Colorado, I wouldn't mind it being 4 or 5 degrees warmer on average each day. It might suck in the summer. But, you know, if temperatures, let's say temperatures go up an average of 4 degrees a day, and that's all that happened. You guys would handle it. You know, it'd be a little nicer in the winter. We'd have a lot more days that would be too hot in the summer, but you guys would be fine. But unfortunately, that's not all it is. When the temperatures goes up, it sort of sets off a chain reaction of other changes. The oceans respond differently. Plants respond differently. Growing seasons change markedly. Weather patterns are disrupted. I was in Myanmar a few years ago, and I talked to a farmer, and people that work with the earth really seem to notice that something's changed over the last 20 or 30 years. And what they were saying is they were really concerned because the plants were sprouting earlier in the year, but the pollinators, the bugs, weren't. So the plants would come up and the pollinators weren't out yet. And then the plants would die and they'd lose their crop. So crops were changing their cycles, but insects were more slow to respond. It's because the temperatures were heating up earlier in the year. And we know that temperatures affect weather patterns. We know that they affect ocean currents. Ocean currents can affect weather patterns and can affect droughts. Think about when it's warmer, okay? On those hot days in the summer, what if it was 5 degrees warmer? Things would dry out a lot more, wouldn't they? But what also happens is that warm air carries more moisture than cold air. So if we heat the air up, we actually put more moisture in the air. Think of all that stuff that evaporated, right? It goes into the air. When you do get storms, they tend to be bigger. So that's, scientists like to say, you know, when we have climate change, it's going to make us not only more dry when it's dry, it's going to make us more wet when it's wet. I mean, it seems opposite, right? How can you be more dry and more wet at the same time? When it's hotter, you get more evaporation. So when it's not raining, it's drying out faster. And then when it does rain, it rains a whole crap load more. And we end up with more flooding. That's just from raising the temperatures a few degrees. Now, this is important. And the deniers will point this out rightfully. The climate's always changing. If somebody says they don't believe in climate change, they're just plain wrong. They are 100% wrong. You cannot deny that climate is changing and be right. It's always changed. If you go back to when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, it was about 25 degrees warmer per average every day. Think if it was 25 degrees warmer every day in the summer. Instead of 100, which is unbearably hot in Colorado, it's 125. In Phoenix, where it sometimes hits 120, it's almost 150 degrees. Not good for mammals. Really great if you're a reptile. That's why reptiles did so well during that time period. They loved the warm temperatures. And there were no humans back when dinosaurs were around to raise the temperature. So temperatures have gone up, they've gone down. Just in the past 400,000 years, we've had 6 ice ages. The last one was just 10, 12,000 years ago. Humans weren't a very populated species during any of those. Humans didn't create any of those ice ages or the warm periods in between. The climate has changed a lot on its own. Sometimes these changes also were accompanied by changes in greenhouse gases, but sometimes they weren't. There's sometimes in Earth history when warm temperatures and CO2 were not correlated at all. So the climate has always changed. It's going to continue to change. People who dismiss this say that. But what they fail to realize is that even though the climate changes all the time, humans can change it too, and we can greatly change the rate of it. And that's what scientists are most concerned about right now, is how quickly we're changing the climate. We are probably changing it quicker than we're going to be able to respond to it as humans. And that's the real danger to us as a species. Any questions so far? Like I said before, changes in the Earth's climate can be due to a lot of things. It can be due to changes in greenhouse gases. It can be due to changes in the brightness of the sun. It can be due to changes in how reflective the Earth is. When we have ice ages, we have lots of ice, lots of snow, lots of white. That actually helps us make us even colder. And then when that ice goes away, we're a darker planet. We absorb more of the sunlight, which helps to make us even warmer yet. And what we don't want to do is get into a situation where one or the other of those just sort of spirals out of control, especially with the warming. We don't want it to warm and then set off a chain of events that makes it warmer yet, and makes it warmer yet. An example is we are warming today. That means that ice is melting in the polar regions. And what they're finding out is that these polar regions that used to be buried under ice have lots of methane in the ground, and now the methane is coming out at a rapid rate. Methane is just like CO2. It retains heat. So that makes the world hotter, which means more melting, which means more methane, which means more melting, which means more methane. And you can get on this spiral that you can't turn away from. So we're worried about hitting a tipping point that we can't come back from. Some scientists say we've already hit it. We will not cool off. We are going to keep getting warmer, and we're going to die off. Unless we put our ingenuity and our engineering to work and start extracting carbon out of the atmosphere. There's a group of scientists that are 100% sure that we've already messed it up. There's no coming back from it. Most scientists think we're not quite there yet. I don't have an opinion. It's not that I don't care. I just don't know. All right, some more terms. These first two are super important because people get them confused all the time, And because they get them confused, they say really stupid things that piss me off. So don't do this. Weather. What's the weather outside? Sunny, probably what, 50 degrees out there right now. No rain, not many clouds, light winds. The weather tomorrow going to be exactly the same? The weather in Florida exactly the same? No, the weather is atmospheric conditions at a specific time and place. So the weather right now is sunny, 55 degrees, light winds. Is it going to be exactly the same 3 hours from now? Probably not. The weather here is different than the weather in Phoenix right now. Different than the weather in Baghdad right now. Different than the weather in Cape Town, South Africa right now. The weather is atmospheric conditions at a specific time and place. Climate. You can think of it as being the average weather at a place. So it's the atmospheric conditions that are averaged over an extended time period. It is possible that right now, somewhere in Florida, it's 55 degrees, sunny and light winds. It'd be possible for somewhere in Florida to have pretty much the exact same weather we have here right now. Same temperature, same light winds, same amount of sun. Is the climate in Florida the same as the climate in Colorado? No, they have a different climate. They tend to have a warmer, wetter climate. If you average it over a year, they're going to have more hot days. They're going to have a lot more rainfall. They're going to have a lot higher humidity. This next analogy is my favorite. Easiest way to think about climate and weather. Weather is the clothes you're wearing right now. Climate is the clothes in your closet. Every one of you has a long shirt. Every one of you has a sweatshirt or a jacket on. You guys are all dressed pretty similarly. You're dressed for 55 degrees. Maybe when you got here this morning, it was 40 degrees. You're dressed for cool weather, right? Are you going to wear this in July? Probably not. But I would venture to guess that if you looked in your closet today, what kind of clothes would you see? You'd see a parka, right? Because you know it's going to get cold in a month. You're going to have some good cold weather clothes. But you're also going to have some shorts, you're going to have some tank tops. You're going to have stuff for the summer, right? What if you lived on the equator? Going to have a parka. It's never going to get below 80 degrees. You're never going to have a parka. You probably not even have a sweatshirt. If you do, it's probably just going to be one. So you're going to have clothes that are going to match the average weather or the range of weather conditions you might get. So again, what drives me nuts is when you get somebody that says, oh, we just had 13 days in a row of minus 50. There's no global warming. That drives me nuts. That's weather. That means the weather for the last 2 weeks has been strange. Now, if it's 50 degrees for the next 5 years, then you could say the climate's changing. Weather, short-term conditions, climate. What does it do in an area over an extended period of time? All right, let's stop right there, and I can hand your exams back.